Over the past few months, I've been playing the Ace Attorney Trilogy, and finally, after so long, because, I don't know, procrastination exists, and I've been doing that for, forever, the journey has come to an end. Through all of its twists and turns, it truly did show me what it meant to be an Ace Attorney.
Boo! You stink!
You can laugh if you want. Okay, but seriously, I think it's time I finally talk about the final game in this original trilogy, Trials and Tribulations. Now, does this game serve as a good conclusion to this trilogy, or does it fall flat? Well, I already know since I played the game, so let's delve into it, because the truth is, it's a little more complex than you'd think. Now, if you've ever watched any of the other Ace Attorney videos I've made, then you'll know that I go through a little process. So we've got 5 different categories to go over. We've got the gameplay of the game, we've got the story of the game, we've got the music of the game, we've got the art style of the game, and we've got the etc. of the game. Because, we gotta talk about other miscellaneous details that don't fit into any of these categories. Now, without further ado, let's just delve right into it. The gameplay of Trials and Tribulations really does the most with the whole idea of lawyers and deducing or whatever. It goes out of its way to make harder questions that don't feel absurd. Actually, that's not always true. There's sometimes moments where there is truly absurdity. But if you don't understand what this gameplay style is, think of a deduction game, right? You gotta catch the little lies in someone's testimony. Now, they're generally pretty easy, but throughout Trials and Tribulations, I did find myself struggling a bit more than usual. That may just have been because, I don't know, maybe it's just I'm bad, but it genuinely felt like this was a good sort of final hurrah in terms of gameplay, and you'll see that with a lot of things in this game. This was definitely a series that was meant to be a trilogy, and then they made 3 more mainline games, 2 spin-offs about the antagonist, and then 2 spin-offs that take place in Great Britain. Now, I did struggle with this game the most, but I didn't feel frustrated the most. See, in the other games, they tend to have these gotcha moments, but in this game, I think there was only 1 or 2 moments where I was like, oh, that's kind of stupid. But overall, I really did feel like this was a good challenge on the Ace Attorney formula, and it did add a lot, especially for something that is supposed to be sort of like the magnum opus of it. One thing this series is known for is its iconic music tracks, and this game is no different. Trials and Tribulations has one of the most iconic soundtracks in the series so far. See, in this game, they tend to have a more dramatic feeling towards all the songs. Everything does feel like a finality, especially for this. There's a big emphasis on ending and the true conclusion, and well, nothing amplifies that better than, the music of the game. It's truly outstanding and makes every trial feel like it's about to be the end of the entire world, just because it's so dramatic. Geez Louise, get out of that phase, bruh. The art style in Ace Attorney doesn't really change throughout this trilogy, mostly just because it's been the same trilogy for the past 3 games, but you can see some of the distinct character designs really popping out in this one. Characters like Luke Gatme, Godot are just chef's kiss. And there's so many character designs that are just adorable. Even Sister Bikini to an extent. Look, I'm just saying there's good design in this game, and I'm not gonna pretend like there's not, because there clearly is. Don't have a lot to say, because, the same art style 3 times in a row. There's only so much I can say about the art style. Compared to Apollo Justice, which I have started playing, you can really see the age on this one, even if it's an upgraded trilogy. It still looks really good though, even if it is just a simple remaster. That being said though, you can tell it was a GBA game. The story of Trials and Tribulations is probably the best one in this entire trilogy, really coming together as one piece instead of a few separated stories. Well, except one chapter, but we'll talk about that. So, I'd like to say, spoiler warning, we're gonna go over every single chapter and say what I liked, what I disliked, things like that. I recommend you go play the game if you're convinced. There's 2 other games in the trilogy. It's usually on sale for a lot cheaper, but even so, the original price is still probably worth it. I think it's $40, but just go play the game. And I'm gonna start talking about the game in 3, 2, 1. Chapter 1 of this game was quite possibly the coolest chapter in any Ace Attorney game so far, just because it was so cool to finally play as a different protagonist in the past nonetheless. The whole trial was very interesting and set up for more things in the future. Did find Phoenix to look a little weird, same with Mia if I'm gonna be honest with you. Their sprites just seem slightly off, which I guess makes sense, they were younger. I still did enjoy this chapter a lot. The whole case was somewhat simple, but they've added complexity to these first cases since, Larry Butts and the Thinker. But we're here now, and it was a very satisfying chapter to play. Now, it was a little ridiculous, oh, I wonder if he got shocked or not, and there's an electrical wire, literally right behind you. Oh man, I wonder how they can prove that. But I'm just gonna sum it up to first case stupidity. Chapter 2 in this game was honestly amazing. I loved how it started, but I did wish they kept to the theft part instead of going straight to murder, or, what they do every time. This chapter stars Ron Delight and Desiree Delight, and also Luke Atme. These characters are a lot of fun, even if Luke Atme is a little annoying. See, these characters just feel a lot of fun, and the case has enough complexity where it was really baffling to see what happened, but I still felt satisfied with where it ended. Ron Delight is the cutest looking character in video game history. He may be a freaking child in terms of character, but man, do I just love this chapter. It felt satisfying, and the fact that it almost duped us out with just a theft, which would have been amazing, not gonna lie, still goes to show how freaking good this chapter was. I will say, I found Larry Butts' character to be a lot more annoying in this game than I remember in the first game, and this chapter does show that a lot, and we'll get to him in later chapters as well. But the whole case did end up having a pretty good conclusion, Godot being a fun character, and we even got to see this Canadian judge for the first time, or the judge's brother, or whoever you want to say. Gave me high hopes for the chapters to come. Chapter 3 is a mess, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you. The more I look at it, the more I'm like, wow, this is even worse than the big top turnabout. This one was miserable. Honestly, whole way through. First of all, the whole case was sort of goofy to begin with. They already reveal who the killer is at the beginning, and I understand that's sort of what Ace Attorney does sometimes. But this time it just really felt really? You could have had some unique disguise or something, but it was super obvious. The whole character, all of the characters in this chapter were just very unlikable as well. Every single one, literally every character, I was just not having a good time with. This chapter itself had some interesting complexities, but nothing was like, wow, this really made me feel smart. It was more like, oh, so he held the teacup the opposite way. You spend the whole first day of this trial literally doing nothing. And I understand that was to establish this old man being cuckoo when he actually wasn't, plot twist. But it just feels like that whole first part of this chapter is a waste. There are some characters in this chapter that are just not portrayed in a way that I like, and I can understand that, this was made in 2003, but that doesn't make it any less just uncomfortable to sit through. Chapter 3 is 100% the weakest one in the series, and I think I read somewhere that this was intended to be Injustice for All, so you can tell why it just feels so off-putting compared to everything else in this game. Moving on to something better. Chapter 4 is one of those ones I was expecting to be short and sweet, and I ended up enjoying a lot more than I thought I would. This one felt tense and kind of uncomfortable at times, just because of the issues dealt with in this chapter. I enjoyed playing as Mia again, did not expect that to happen, and it was a good setup for Chapter 5, because honestly, without this chapter, Chapter 5 would not end up being as good as it was. Terry Falls and Dahlia Hawthorne both are hoot and holler, if you will. It is definitely a little more depressing though, and I was very curious the whole time on how this would end, especially with the notion at the beginning that this was the trial that ruined Mia's life. It was very fun. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, expecting it to be a short little, ooh, this happened, okay, time to move on. No, it was really satisfying and gratifying to get through. It was a little tough, but that's what makes it fun.
Objection! Objection!
Now, Chapter 5. Wow, this really brought the entire trilogy together, really incorporating everything from every single different part of this game. You start out playing as Edgeworth and then go up against Franziska von Karma. This beginning part of this chapter was just loads of fun. The characters aren't very unlikable either. All of the witnesses just have this sort of tone about them, except Larry Butts. He's also here for some reason and literally serves no reason to the plot other than to just make things more convoluted and have one of the weirdest executions of a plan I've ever seen explained to us. I'll get on that in a second. But essentially, this first part of the chapter is a lot of fun. It's kind of goofy seeing Edgeworth as the defense for once. It really does feel like a final battle between Von Karma and him. He of course wins because, Edgeworth is super cool and whatnot. And I love how he says psychologues. Then the second part of this chapter gets insane. So I'd like to say there's one part of this almost perfect chapter that's just very weird, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you. The pendulum, where they threw the body over the bridge. I'll be completely honest with you, that was the most Danganronpa-esque explanation for anything I've ever seen. It was ridiculous, stupid ridiculous. Straight up, I couldn't take it seriously in some aspects, but I still had fun with it, of course. This chapter ends up having a very fun conclusion with the return of the original theme from Ace Attorney, from the first Ace Attorney specifically, and it just makes everything really come together. All the characters, every loose end, from Misty Faye to straight up Mia's whole story of how she died. Hell, even the dude who killed Mia is involved with, Godot not seeing red on white. Insane. Literally insane how this came together. And it made it feel like, yes, this was supposed to be like this. It really felt good to play. All characters that were important to the series are involved. We got all three prosecutors that challenge Phoenix throughout this series. Hell, Mia comes back, we got Dahlia, bro, everything happens. And it has one of the coolest breakdown scenes in the entire game. Everything about this chapter is just wonderful, and it makes me glad I played the Ace Attorney games. I don't think it was as intense as the Matt and Guard case, though, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. This one had its intense moments, but overall I felt less of a sense of urgency and more of confusion, which makes sense. This one has a lot of spirit medium stuff, which I'm more used to now that I've played like this series for 15 cases so far. I found it good, if not a little convoluted here and there, and made me have to go back and think about what actually happened, since sometimes it just feels like they move on to the next point without recapping what had happened at the very end, you know? That being said, let's move on to the finale. Ace Attorney has been a journey for me. Not just this game, but all three of this original trilogy. Everything felt like one cohesive story, like everything was coming together, and it did. It was beautiful to see. It made me an Ace Attorney fan. I think I'm one now, right? I can count. It's been 3 games over like 60 hours, and this has been a series I've deeply enjoyed. And it's just getting started. The fact that this basically expands into a universe, hell, even it is a universe at this point, beyond Phoenix Wright, it's amazing. I'm excited to see what the Ace Attorney franchise brings. I've loved Trials and Tribulations, Justice for All, and even the original Ace Attorney, and I'm excited to see what comes next. Now, I will be taking a little bit of a pause just to make a few different videos, hopefully not 3 months apart, but wow. Yeah, I'm excited. I've been playing Apollo Justice, and it's pretty good, not gonna lie. I think this series has done a lot for me. It really was something special, and I can see why so many people hold it dearly. I'd like to say Ace Attorney is one of my favorite franchises, but we're just getting started. Hopefully it can keep up the pace, but from the looks of it, looks like we're in for a fantastic time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys soon enough at least.